Hi, thank you so much. I'm truly deeply honored to be here today. And I'm especially honored to be here today because I want to tell you a story about a guy named Peter Gibbons. So, Peter is a completely ordinary person, just like you and I. He puts on his pants one leg at a time. He is in his mid to late 20s. He's a software engineer at a large tech company called Initech. And his favorite hobby is fishing. So Peter drives to work every single day, and he ends up choosing the wrong lane of traffic, which completely drains him even before he arrives at work. And when he does finally arrive at work, he's met with other colleagues who are equally dragging themselves for the workday. And then throughout Peter's workday, he meets other colleagues and managers that constantly remind him about KPIs and metrics and how he's not reaching his best self. So Peter finally was totally fed up, and he just didn't want to deal with this anymore. So he decided to go see an occupational hypnotherapist. And when he went to the therapist asked, "Why are you here today? What's your purpose for this?" And Peter replied, "Every single day feels like the worst day of my life, and I just can't do work anymore. All I want to do is feel like I've been fishing all day." So the hypnotherapist was like, "Whoa, okay. I can't help you necessarily with that, but what I can do is take away your worries, cares, and inhibitions about work." So they do their session, and after their session, Peter feels pretty relieved, and he really starts to understand his relationship to work, and that he only shows up not to lose his job. And his only true motivator is to work as hard as to not to get fired. So that's a pretty interesting story, right? And it might sound familiar to you for two specific reasons. And the first being, 84% of the global workforce has the same exact story. 84% of the global workforce is disengaged with the work that they do. And the second reason why this story might sound quite familiar to you is it's actually the first 20 minutes of the film Office Space. So this film was released in 1999. 1999 was 20 years ago. And what makes this especially crazy is the way we explain work and how we've experienced work hasn't changed that much since 1999. Okay, so why is this? Why do we still have the same conversation about work today? And it's today we live in an increasing premium to find meaningful work and for work to define who you are. And that's actually a really great thing. That's not something terrible. We live in a purpose-driven society. However, work doesn't function that way. Work doesn't understand that you need to find meaningful work. Work as purpose is highly transactional. They see you for having a selected amount of skill sets, and then they want you to deliver with those skill sets on certain outputs. But also, bring your best self as well. So, bringing your best self is really interesting because what does that even mean? What does it even mean to bring your best self? And I'm actually going to pause here for a slight second for us to explore the idea of your best self. So some of you may be familiar with this pyramid. It is Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and he wrote about it in his 1943 paper, A Theory of Human Motivation. And basically what this pyramid outlines is your basic needs, your psychological needs, and your self-fulfillment needs. And guess what? Guess where your best self lies? Is in this very top about self-actualization and where your creativity comes from. So in order to reach that top part of the pyramid, you need to be able to understand all these other needs and how have you developed through them. So what does work have to do with best self and this pyramid and all these needs? So in order to be your best self, you need to go through some personal development. And what the conversation happening in work today in organizations is that they're mutually exclusive, but actually they're intertwined and support each other. So this is a report from LinkedIn's 29 Learning Report, and these are the top needed soft skills for work: creativity, persuasion, analytical reasoning, collaboration, flexible approach, aka adaptability. Do you think that Peter Gibbons would be able to excel at any of these skills without first understanding himself and his motivation towards it? I don't think so. And actually, I'm not alone in thinking that this isn't possible without personal development. There are two Harvard researchers and professors, Robert Keegan and Lisa Laskow-Lahey, and this is exactly what they did, is they went to go to different organizations and see how personal development and professional development work together in an organization. And what they were able to find was the biggest cause of work burnout is going too long without experiencing any personal development. And furthermore, what they found was a lot of organizations was trying to solve this issue by sending people off to separate courses or having them take care of itself. But what really needed to happen was for that development to happen within the organization, for you to align your personal development with work development and your professional development. So, and the thing that's also really cool about what they found is working on personal development didn't detract from profits, but actually added. And when organizations started to realize that, they found that pursuing profitability goes hand in hand with human growth. So, fantastic. Really great news. Now you understand what your best self comes from and what are the needed skills for today, but what's in it for you? How are you going to be able to do something about this? And the real reason I'm here today is help to advocate and help you advocate for your best self at work. And the way you're going to be able to do that is to be able to engage in conversation with your leaders. Start asking questions to start normalizing this conversation. I mean, if you were to think about it, ping pong tables, resting pods, bringing dogs to work, endless snacks, totally amazing. However, that wasn't the norm before. And what happened is sought after talent like yourselves said, hey, I need this a part of my environment in order to have an enhanced employee experience. So now you need to elevate that conversation and say, hey, I want to feel really attached to work, but I can't understand that if I don't understand where I'm at and how it aligns with the professional development. So some questions you should ask your leaders, and that's like your managers, your CEO, HR representative. Ask somebody that has some sort of ability to make change in your organization, and ask them, how do you see personal growth? How do you see it tied to my actual KPIs and metrics? And you're gonna get a lot of blank stares, but that's okay. It starts to normalize that conversation and understanding this is important to you. And this is the reason why I wanna work here. And I'm gonna work here for more than just 6 months. I wanna work here for several years if I can, if I know this is a part of my personal journey and my professional journey. So now that you know some ways to enter the organization and ask them for how to work with your best self, I can't send you on your merry way and be demanding self-entitled monsters, right? I mean, people already think that about our generation. So how do you put in your end before you go to your organization? And this part actually is really interesting because it's a lot of self-work. It's a lot of self-discovery. And there is an executive coach named Jerry Kalana, and he explains it in a way called radical self-inquiry. And the reason why I really like what he has to say is that the baggage that you have, and trust me, everyone has baggage, if you don't face it or deal with it, it will show up everywhere. You as a leader and how you lead, how you collaborate with others, and how you want to go about presenting yourself. It will show. You will outsource the things that you're trying to deny. So his approach is really interesting, and I like this because it's easy to understand. So first question you can ask yourself is, does the inner match the outer? And if it doesn't, why? Why do you have these differences between how you represent yourself at work or how you feel? That's a good start to dig into where you're coming from. And then another question that he wants you to explore is, how have your basic needs being met? So if we go back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, there is their basic needs, which is like food, accommodation. Like, how have you found warmth and safety in your life? And then there is the psychological needs. How have you come to a community? How have you come to a trusted part in your life where you have people to be around? And you may realize you don't have those things. And so these are really great things to come from before you start building on the skill of collaboration and having to deal with other people. You can't do it if you don't know yourself. And lastly, I really love this question because it's particularly hard for me. And it's to understand your relationship. How did your relationship to money first get formed? And that's going to be really insightful in terms of what is important to you in terms of work. Is it because you want to achieve like the highest accolades, or is it because you want to have as much money because you didn't have security when you're younger? You can go into this huge, deep pathway and really understanding yourself. And the reason why personal development is so important, because it's become aware of what's happening in your thoughts and your mind, and being aware how those affect your behaviors and how those affect your emotions, and that also will how they affect your results. So now I just want to quickly tie back to Peter Gibbons and what happened to him. So after that therapy session, he realized that work wasn't something that he really cared about. He understood himself a bit better and the things that he cared about. And a bit of a spoiler alert, you guys had potentially 20 years to watch this movie, but is that he decides to get a construction job at the very end. And for him, that was more meaningful because he understood his relationship to work. And the reason why I bring up Peter Gibbons is because I used to be a Peter Gibbons. I used to show up to work completely drained, just not caring about anything. And then I decided I need to really understand who I am in order to do better for myself and to do better for those around you. So I urge you to advocate for yourselves, your best selves, so you can decide if you're the Peter Gibbons in the 84%, or you can decide you're the Peter Gibbons in the 15%. Thank you.